Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. I'm going to try a little experiment here and just read you something that I wrote, merely a Facebook post directed to my friends who I keep apprised of my reading. At about 100 pages out from the end of Love in a Fallen City by Eileen Chang, I've set the book aside because I seem to have strained my eyes. A year ago, February, I did that, but not since, and I wasn't pressing the Chang particularly hard, so I wonder what pushed me over the edge. Could it be screen time? So I switched to this in a LibriVox auto version available on YouTube, and finished it this morning. Right now I'm listening at 1.5 speed, but I may try next to up it higher. All I can think of for next is A Tale of Two Cities, because I have the book and I like to have access to a physical copy of what I'm listening to. Hopefully then I can complete the Chang. I was forewarned that Ethan Frome was unendingly bleak. I didn't find it so bad. It wasn't hardy. It was bleak, but in a way common to a lot of poor lives that are before the eyes daily. I couldn't tell at what point cliché and stereotype bleeds into archetype. I liked it better than The Age of Innocence, though in broad strokes, both books tell the same story. Ethan Frome is novella length and cuts to the chase, much in the way I think of Macbeth doing. The plot led to no surprises. All was prefigured and foreshadowed, but because of the location, a world of poverty, all was pared down to essentials without the trivial details which so racked the greater novel, here meaning The Age of Innocence. I'm glad I gave Wharton a second shot. Despite what I said about the plot, her work must exhibit greater range than I thought. And this is indeed the case. When I finished The Age of Innocence, I thought it unlikely that I would rush into reading another book by Wharton. And there you go. I do not regret dipping my toes in a second time. If you've read both of these books, you will understand, I think, what I'm talking about, how the plots are very similar. I don't know if she went into a different direction with any other of her books, but the characters in Ethan Frome, I referred to these characters as not being particularly likable, representing the wealthy class, and occupied or preoccupied incessantly with what I refer to as trivialities or just silly stuff. This book is not the case. Everybody's poor, and the cast of characters is cut back, and everything that occurs is pretty much of pressing urgency. These characters almost seem like something out of John Bunyan, not necessarily fully defined individuals, but stand-ins for every man, so to speak. I find that the main character of Ethan Frome is so much like so many men that I have known, and even myself to a degree. I think almost any man has been in his situation to some degree or other, possibly without the untoward resolution. It ends on a definitively tragic note, and I think most of us who find ourselves in such a situation find other ways out. Both of her lead characters in this and in The Age of Innocence, I think, represent tremendous insight or insights into the male psyche. So much for the idea that men shouldn't write women or women shouldn't write men. I suppose when a woman author has insight, she really goes deep, whereas men, when they are writing women, they may very well be messing around with some idealized version in their head. It may indeed be that women know men more than men know women, but I can't really speak on that. Was there anything else that, well, you know, so I listened to Ethan Frome in audiobook, and I went with a reader that I had listened to before some years ago, the same reader, which I will link in the description, who did a rendition of Thomas Hardy. And so because it was the same man reading both works, inevitably I find myself drawing comparisons between Ethan Frome and Thomas Hardy's book, Tess of the Durbervilles. And again, I've been using the phrase cut to the chase an awful lot lately, but I think in that respect, Ethan Frome beats out Tess. It just is, everything is so compressed. Hardy's book is no less powerful, but again, it goes into so many different areas. There are passages of prose in Hardy. I'm thinking of two paragraphs in particular where he talks about the fate of animals. One is a meticulous description of a field being cut down and the animals being reduced to a smaller and smaller plot of land until they are finally done in. So that is one. And then there is a scene, if I am remembering this right, where Tess comes upon the scene of where had been a duck hunt of some sort. And Hardy was very attuned to the plight of animals well in advance of his time. And so that's one of the things I love most about Thomas Hardy. But as a general principle, when it comes to works of art, I think that brevity is a virtue. And I say that knowing full well that myself as a writer have tended to go on, if you know what I mean. I have not been short in anything that I've written. So in that sense, I think if you compare, say, a short poem with a long poem, I think I would automatically give the short poem the extra points for the brevity, all else being equal. Of course, the comparison breaks down because you can take one poem like Sonnet 73 by Shakespeare and compare it to one poem, the Commedia of Dante, and there you get into something of an apple versus orange comparison, even though each of those works is indeed one single poem. So these are just thoughts that I've come upon with Edith Wharton, and the fact that she took a different class of people, poor folk, poor farming folk of New England, as opposed to the hoity-toity, which I think is what she owes her reputation to, largely, or at least what we think of her as primarily centering on nowadays. I think now I have to give her the benefit of the doubt and be more than willing to plunge into some other work by this author. There is also, I would say, a nearness to our time and to my place that you find in Wharton, of course, that you don't find in Hardy. So my experience reading Tess, and that was the only Thomas Hardy novel I have read, was sort of a tough one. I started on the page and then resorted to the audiobook because it was a tough haul for me, to be sure. Now, I don't know for sure my eye is feeling better today, so I would like, if at all possible, to skip the Dickens. In fact, I think my same reader has done A Tale of Two Cities, which is a good chance, but I would rather not read Dickens at this time if I can finish up Eileen Chang and move on to something else. We'll see what happens. I expect my reading to be slower in the next coming weeks. Thank you very much for stopping by my channels. I'll return to spout as my whimsy takes me.